In today's journey, we take a look at how to do a deep cleaning on an anti-gravity pump. Now, Northern Brewer does not condone this, so you'll probably void your warranty by doing routine maintenance. Well, that's why no product ever gets a 10 out of 10. 9's always the best because something always goes wrong. They also said don't use inline filters. We don't know why, we've had great luck with them. So, you can't clean it, you can't use a filter to protect it, so it's a $70 pump that... Yeah, you tell them, Phil. A $70 pump with no replacement parts, no diagram, and no customer support. That's more than 3 points off. And just in case Thomas is watching, there was always a plan on how to fix this pump. Conveniently, this video will work to fix almost any membrane pump. Also, any cheap membrane pump can be used for donor parts. These are both actually food safe. It just feels better to use the translucent white plastic. It's a subconscious thing. Being able to see the liquid transfer doesn't actually mean it's cleaner. But enough belly aching, let's get into the disassembly. And conveniently, it's pretty easy, but you do want to have a sure hand. You can destroy your pump permanently if you cross-thread these screws. And the only other thing we're going to need is some cleaning chemicals. Today we're using PBW. Be mindful on overusing PBW on parts like these because it can be very abrasive and wear them out prematurely. Alright, now let's get to the fun part. Of course, keep your pump unplugged during the entire maintenance process. Step 1 is to remove these 5 screws. It is important to remember that you're working with a soft plastic, so you will want to be gentle. Conveniently, all the screws are the same length, so you don't have to worry about mixing them up. The lesson we learned last time was to also only disassemble half of the pump at once. It makes it a lot easier to reassemble it that way. It may be tempting to use power tools here, but again, it's soft plastic, so hand tools are highly recommended. It takes all 5 of these screws screwed in properly to actually hold in the gasket properly, so you don't want to screw up any of the holes. This is probably the number one reason why Northern Brewer doesn't want you doing this, is that if it gets screwed up, it forms a leak, and then someone gets hurt, they could be liable. But the brewmaster in me says, if I can't see that it's clean, how do I know it's clean? But here's the money shot that would have saved us the time of having to open a different pump just to fix the other one. If you've been having trouble reassembling a membrane pump, this is the part of the video you want to pause during reassembly. But don't worry, we're going deeper. And if you're confused on where springs go, you just always look for these little circles, and that's what holds the spring in place. And it's also what needs to come out next, because these next 2 pieces are the easiest to lose during disassembly. Now, the next piece is one of these pegs. There's a total of 4, and you always know which way it faces because the little dot is going to face where the spring is. There's a cross section where the spring doesn't go. Now, this next part can be a little tricky because you may be tempted to just go in there and grab or force out these other plastic parts. But the membrane is holding it in there real good, and you don't want to scratch up any of the plastic. So at this point, we gently pull at the membrane so that we can get loose these little caps. And these are the trickiest part because there's a total of 4, but there's 2 different shapes of them. And it all comes down to which side of the pump it's on and how the springs are interacting to create a plug. But when in doubt, the round post should always be facing the spring. We call this side the cap side because the post wears the little plastic O-ring like a cap. We call the one on the left the cup because the post sits in it like a cup. Speaking of which, there's a total of 4 springs, but because we're only taking apart half the pump right now, there's only 2 coming out. And now that they are out, you can see that the outlet side of the pump has a little post to hold on to the springs from the inside. Alright, now it's time for the second hardest part, and this is a brains over brawn section. Take your time to easily pull off this membrane. Don't tug on the rings as you may rip them. These are extremely and firmly attached, and only remove this completely if you have a really deep cleaning that you need to do. Often we were able to leave it on. Unfortunately, this time we need to do a hard soak and it's gotta come off. And now that it's out, we can see that it's discolored from its abuse that we have put it through over this last year. Now, normal people shouldn't be seeing that happen, but if you do what we did in the video, we're not surprised. But that's also, we need to clean pumps because things happen in the brewery. Don't believe us? Check out this video where we were testing what you can do with an inline filter in a worst case scenario. There was no mercy that day. But as you can see, it does open up all the way so you can clean everything that needs to be cleaned. The other side is also clearly just the same stuff in reverse, as we can see here from the underbelly. Now, if you want to disregard our suggestions, just as we disregarded Northern Brewer's suggestion, if you do disassemble both sides at once, you don't have to worry about mixing up parts from side to side other than the cover pieces. And they're easy to identify as the flow arrow is on the cover itself. This indicates the flow direction, and it should line up with the flow direction arrow that's on the pump itself. It's underneath the logo. But here you can see that while the cover plates look the same, the flow indicator arrow is on different sides. Now excuse us for a moment as we go put all these parts into a bath of PBW. If you have something on there real tough like these threads, we recommend a soft toothbrush. Kids' gloves at every angle. Reassembly is mostly the same in reverse, except for you may not have taken the membrane out. In which case, if you have, make sure it's extremely dry before you put it in. Phil seems to have skipped that part. The problem is if any moisture gets to that motor, you could fry it, start a fire, all sorts of other problems. He told me not to worry about it because he's going to take it apart again anyways. And then I got more worried. But, here's a perfect opportunity to show you why it's called a cap. It's because the spring goes in first, then you put the little round peg into the hole like it's a head, and to keep it all contained so it doesn't fall out when we move the pump around, it needs a little cap to keep it in position. It can be a little overwhelming when you have all the parts scattered out all over the place, but once you get this first quadrant done, things are going to really fall back into position. The worst case if you screw this part up is either the pump will work backwards or won't move anything at all. You'll just have to disassemble it and try again. And the cup side is basically the same thing, just inverted. You'll put the cup in first, followed by the peg with the flange side down. That's because the flange side has a little lip or foot that helps it get a better seal than that completely flat side that the peg has, which is better suited for getting even pressure from the spring. It's like someone designed this stuff. And this is the part that we screwed up last time we were rebuilding the pump. You just stick the spring on the top like this. It's going to feel a little weird and awkward, but there's that post that's on the cover, and that's going to hold the spring in place. And we know things are going good because everything's lining up perfectly with the cover. But unfortunately, this is where the bad news comes in that you need to take care with screwing in these screws. And I don't keep saying that because I want to practice my sibilance. The trick here is that as you're screwing them in, what you want to do first is turn the screw backwards, so lefty-loosey, until you feel the threads come into alignment. That little click, that little grooves coming into position. Once you feel that, gently and slowly go in, unlike Phil in his constant confidence. He's probably disassembled his pump over 20 times by now. But that's a part where problems come in, is confidence and arrogance is the leading cause of all mistakes and accidents. Also, I'm using my power as editor to speed up the film speed. So if you followed from start to finish, you see this isn't a hard job. It is, however, full of spots you can screw up. And with there being no replacement parts available, if you screw it up, it's the whole thing. That's why when a company decides to put its logo onto a product, we like to see a support for right to repair. Because we don't want to see the whole thing end up in the trash because one single thing goes wrong with it. Especially when a lot of this stuff is just off-the-shelf parts. For example, did you know that Adventures in Homebrewing has a pump nearly identical to this one? Although it claims 1.5 gallons per minute. Click on our affiliate links to help support us so that we can buy one ourselves to test that theory. If you don't want to make a purchase through our affiliate links, you can also like, comment, and subscribe. That also helps us out with YouTube, and it's from the support from viewers like you that helps us afford things like buying pumps just to disassemble them. Now, there is one additional step to disassembling the back plate, and that is dealing with these electrical cables. Now, in a cheaper version, these would be properly color-coded, but because this is a consumer-grade product, They're both just black for some reason. Actually, it's just a vibrating motor. The DC current probably doesn't matter which way it goes. But regardless, things should go back together the proper way. The way we keep them in mind is that they naturally will curve to the way they're plugged in. So there'll be one going horizontal and another going vertical, and there'll be posts on the pump itself to reflect that. If you have to twist the connector, it's going in the wrong side. And I shouldn't have to tell you that this should be unplugged during this. 12 volt DC still kind of hurts, even if it's not going to kill you outright. So proceed at your own risk, as always. And check out some of these other videos. Get that view count up. We want to buy more stuff and disassemble it, but YouTube ain't cutting any bills for us yet. Also, let us know down in the description below if you've had any less than satisfactory experiences with customer support anywhere before.